This video is sponsored by Surfshark.
Welcome back to the channel. Last time we told you that we might be having to give up van life in the UK due to the horrible sort of predicament we're in with our campervan Morgan. We did say that we'd update you with some news, and some news has unfolded, so I'm going to do that shortly. But as we've got a few new subscribers, we thought that we would share with you the context and the history on this drizzly rainy day that got us into the situation in the first place, because our van life journey has been nothing short of mental. Morgan, our campervan, actually started life off as a removals van down in Devon, and now he's our full-time off-grid home that's currently by this beautiful beach in Sussex. And unfortunately we've just had to go to the garage to pick him up, where he's had a new engine installed. The new engine installed because the old one got fried, because the mechanics say, and obviously we believe as well, that the engine wasn't installed correctly. So it's turned into this huge legal matter, and it's thrown van life and the future of us doing van life into jeopardy. What's really funny and ironic is that Morgan is actually in the best state he's ever been in. He's like a new van. He's got a brand new engine, all new ancillary parts, 12 months warranty on that engine, 12 months MOT. The back is like, as I said to you, is like a cozy little beach shack cottage that's fully off-grid in the winter and summer, yet we're in this situation. Only us. Van life for us actually started because we chose it to. We chose to do van life. We know that many people are sort of almost forced into alternative living because of the crazy cost of living crisis here in the UK, something that we're recognising massively at the moment, especially coming back from India. But full-time van life for us actually started over there on the end of that cliff, where we were living for 5 years full-time in a static caravan. And then now we've been doing almost 3 years full-time in doing van life as well. But yeah, how it all started is really interesting, but I'm gonna have to do this back inside because there's too much water landing on the lens.
Hey.
So you got the diesel heater on?
It's nice and toasty, and it's so cold out there, I can't believe it. Do you fancy a cup of tea? Anyway?
Do I fancy a cup of tea? Do I fancy a cup of tea?
Come on then.
I don't know if you know this, but my dad has just finished full-time work. So as his retirement gift, he's gone off traveling around India on his own. I made sure before he went that he took Surfshark VPN with him, which basically is a virtual private network. In simple terms, establishes a secure connection between you and the internet. That protects you from online threats, attacks, hackers, that sort of thing. So if you want to protect private information on your devices, your phones or your laptops or whatever, it's definitely worth getting Surfshark VPN. It's as simple as downloading an app, and we found 3 other benefits for downloading it. The first one being, if you're in the UK and you're going to, say, India like my dad is, and you're halfway through a series on Netflix, you can continue watching that UK series by telling the internet, just simply scrolling through the countries on your Surfshark VPN app and saying that you're still in the UK. That way you can have access to all that UK content still whilst you're abroad, which you wouldn't ordinarily be able to do. The second advantage is the opposite of that. Whilst you're in the UK, you can say that you're, say, in America and have access to all American content, which would otherwise be blocked in the UK. The third one, and our favourite one, is, believe it or not, airlines charge people, or they sometimes charge people, more money depending on what country that they are booking the flights from. Using a VPN, you can toggle through all the different countries and find the cheapest price for a flight. It works sometimes, it's amazing, definitely try it. Another bonus is that Surfshark comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and Surfshark are giving our audience 3 months for free, so go take advantage of that by heading to the link in the description of this video and using the code HAPPYDAYS. So, where was I? So we lived on that cliff over there near Brighton in a static caravan for 5 years, and that was where we decided to do full-time van life after the last lockdown during the pandemic. That's when we decided that we wanted to do it. You know, full-time van life wasn't a stroke of luck for us. It was actually a result of many years of trying to leave the system, and living in a static caravan was just another cog of that chain. We were trying to live as free a life as we possibly could. But I guess that the whole story predates all of that and goes back even 18 years, where I met Janine for the very first time. So yeah, I met Janine on a beach called Koh Phangan in Thailand, probably 18 years ago to the date when we first met. And it was around about the time where The Beach had just come out. You know the film The Beach with Leonardo DiCaprio? And Backpacking Solo was just getting really popular, especially in Southeast Asia. It was just, the numbers were just starting to grow, even though it wasn't nothing like what it is now. It was a great time to be alive. We experienced so much freedom on our very first travels, solo travels, both traveling each for a year, but not together. And that's where we met 18 years ago. So we met each other, and that started our long relationship together. As you know, we're now married, but it also was our start of our relationship with traveling. Later, we realized that our love of travel was actually the love of the pursuit of freedom. Two things can get tightly woven, and there's a fine line between them, but it was a pursuit of freedom really is a driving force for both of us as we've been moving through life. When you come back from long-term travels, you start to see things a little differently. A lot of our friends who had gone off traveling would come back and see it as a sort of a break from reality, and then come back and get the career, a family, house, car. Nothing wrong with that if that's what you're after. For me and Janine, it didn't feel like it was a gap of reality. It felt like reality, and it felt like a start of a whole lifelong journey. And you know, Janine and I have worked all of our lives. I started my first job off as a paperboy at 12 years old, earning £2 a week, and I've worked ever since then. Just like Janine, going from job to job to job to job, as you do, but we've always worked, especially being coming from a single parent family. Working hard and earning money was a big part of growing up. Both Janine and I did go to university, and we managed to both land ourselves, whilst we were together, graduate sort of jobs, career type jobs, the ones with lots of progression and better salaries and all that sort of business. It was definitely the best money we had earned up until that point, but there was something inside of us that just didn't feel sort of fulfilled at all. So we decided to stick with those career type jobs long enough to save money to go traveling again, which was it took us about a year, I think, to save up to go traveling again. This time we went traveling for 3 years together, and it was the most important travels to date. It was absolutely incredible because we did things like, it was more like a working holiday as well. So we worked on orchards and vineyards down under in Australia and what have you. This time round, after doing the first initial long travels, this is the second one, and seeing the lives that we could have led going down the career route, or now could be a separate route. And it definitely felt like, once again, part of the whole big life adventure. So Janine and I worked really hard in blistering heat, picking fruit on orchards and grapes on vineyards and what have you. It was really tough work, but Janine and I, we did it for so long that we got so good at it, and we actually managed to make pretty good money by doing it because we got so fast at what we were doing. Plus we were living in low cost sort of outback accommodation, so we ended up saving quite a bit of money as well. After seeing many different countries and being away for 3 years, we missed family. It's a long time to be away from family who we love, so we returned back to see them. The problem with coming back to the UK when you've been away traveling is it can often feel like you're starting from square one again, and it's not a very nice feeling. You start off by visiting family, and then that turns into you needing a job because everything's so expensive, and then if you've got a job you feel that you need somewhere to stay, and then that's exactly what happened. Before long we ended up living back in England in a flat in the Midlands. The good thing that came from it is we had a new fresh mind on us. We knew the direction that we wanted to go in, and it was definitely the pursuit of freedom. The most important thing to me was to work outdoors. I learned quite a bit about horticulture up until that point, as well as having a couple of allotments whilst I was in my teens, that I went for a gardening job. And this gardening job was like really minimum wage job, long hours, you know, but from it I was getting so much experience through hands-on gardening, and they even paid for me to do advanced level gardening qualifications as well whilst I was there. So I was there for 1.5 years, came out with qualifications and lots of experience. Janine worked in a bakery, which she absolutely loved. However, the hours for both of us were just, as you know, so demanding. Sometimes I was doing 6 days a week of 10 to 12 hours, and Janine was having to get up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning for the bakery and working long hours also. But we did it for a 1.5 years, and then we thought enough was enough, and we actually went to go and visit Brighton on a weekend to give ourselves a break. And as we went to go and visit Brighton, we fell in love with it straight away. We realised that we can never live down there because the property prices in Brighton are some of the highest in the country. But whilst we were there, we looked around some of the caravan sites, and we found there's 2 main caravan sites, and we found one that we absolutely loved. And a very short time after, using the money that we'd saved fruit picking, we bought a second-hand caravan right on a cliff, right near Brighton, and that's where we stayed, living in a static caravan for 5 years of our life.
We've got these sea views, and on a clear day it looks absolutely gorgeous. It looks quite ominous. now, like it's going to chuck it down. But that is our caravan tour, and that's the reason why we came here, because of the views and the location.
So moving into a caravan was the first step to living a freer life. Obviously the cost of living is much less living in a caravan than it is elsewhere. Plus it was like we was living on the beach, or it's on a cliff. We just had wall-to-wall sea views. It was incredible. Our lifestyle changed dramatically. Also at this time, a second step to freedom was we started our own business, our own gardening business, where Janine and I worked full-time together doing people's gardens around the Sussex area. So we did this day in, day out, having a really nice time, living as free as possible for 4.5 years, or however long it was, 5 years, until COVID happened. And like many people, COVID massively changed our lives. So despite living in a caravan, lockdowns were, for people like us, were quite difficult, especially someone like me. I'm a fidget, I need to be outside, I need to be doing things. We won't get into it because everybody struggled in many different ways, and it's just a dark time. The good thing that came out of it was the end of the last lockdown, we bought a camper van, our first camper van. It was a Ford Transit named Frida, and we absolutely loved it. We got it converted because we were living in a caravan. We didn't have a driveway or tools or anything like that. So we got it converted by Supermoon Campers in Sussex, Harry there. And he built us a really, really sort of simple but beautiful van. It was very, very good. We never had any problems with that conversion whatsoever. So we bought it for a purpose as a weekend away van, a week's holiday van, maybe 2 weeks holiday van. So we went to go and try it out, being very, very eager. And we went to Glastonbury, was the first place to go and try out. I don't know why Glastonbury. We were supposed to go to Glastonbury for 2 nights and then come back and carry on with work. We stayed a week, calling all the customers, we're not going to be in this week, we'll come and do your garden double time next week. I literally couldn't believe how good van life was. It was the freedom I've been looking for this whole time. And it was beginning to feel like the next chapter of our lives was starting. So the next trip we decided to do was do 2 weeks and see how we would fare in colder conditions. So we did the NC 500.
We've just seen some baby Highland cows, and they're running in a field. There's a white one with really, really long hair. I think you've won haircut of the year.
Look at them together.
Oh, you're so snuggly.
We had a really, really good time. We tested what it was like in colder temperatures. The Transit was a smaller van than what we're in now, and it was just really, really good. In fact, when we came back from living van life in Scotland and then coming back, even just 2 weeks, back to the static caravan, one thing that I always used to look at the static caravan, I always used to feel like returning back to it was like a heart opener. It was like, oh, I can't believe how grateful I am to be living in such a space. And I was grateful. However, it did feel like taking a step backwards when we went back to the static van. So a few conversations later, we both felt the same about it. We decided this would be the start of full-time van life, and we were going to sell the caravan, pretty much give away all of our possessions, and close the business. It was a bit of a risk. We were filming for YouTube. We had started filming for YouTube at the time, except we weren't making hardly any money. I think the most we made in the first 9 months of doing van life was £30 a month. But thankfully we had some savings. We worked hard doing the gardening, but we thought we'd take the risk anyway. We've taken a few risks. It's worth doing. Plus, Janine at this point was really getting into video editing. Janine is completely self-taught at it, and it's definitely what has turned out to be Janine's vocation in life. She absolutely loves it, and thanks to YouTube and starting doing YouTube, because when we started doing van life, that's become what it's become now. The struggle, however, was giving away all of our worldly possessions at that time. It was a very, very difficult time, especially for Janine, because when you're committing to a freer lifestyle, you're committing to minimalism as well. Minimalism and freedom are two and one and the same thing. You have to live a minimal lifestyle for freedom, I believe, and it was definitely the case for us, which meant that we had to give away or sell sentimental items. Very, very difficult thing to do. However, even in a static caravan, even though the static caravan was more like a 2-bedroom flat on the sea, it was you do accumulate quite a lot of stuff, including a brand new sofa. This is how quickly our lives turn around, and it'll give you some insight into what we're like as people. We just bought our very, very first sofa in life, and it felt like the biggest achievement ever. It was a £1,000 sofa, corner sofa, and we were so chuffed with it. We had owned it for about a week before we decided to do full-time van life, and then we had to get rid of it. But when you're committed to something and you know that something's right, that's just how it is. And that's what it was like with the sentimental items as well. We knew we wanted a freer lifestyle, and this was part of the process. So because we were so committed, it took us about a week to do all of that and get rid of everything, close down the gardening business, sell everything, and move out and move into the van. And it was time to finally see what full-time van life was about.
That's what she looks like with the lights on inside. Ready to hit the road.
Right, cool, so we are off. It's just, the sun is just coming up, just peeking up. It's not quite sunrise yet. And we are off to a really good location. Today really is the official day of us starting van life without any other backup plan, or, you know, selling the caravan. You must have seen that in the previous video. So, as much learning was happening doing full-time van life for the very first time, we absolutely loved living in Frida. We did 10 months with no problems whatsoever, traveling all over, having the best time. We discovered wild camping, free camping, and we definitely preferred that over campsite camping, and just have so many fond memories of that. And even compared to living in a static caravan, it was definitely a cheaper way of living. Living in a static caravan is lower cost than renting a flat or what have you, or even having a mortgage, but you still got to pay ground rent fees. And although the fuel costs for living in a van, that's travel. So if you're staying put in the van, we realised that actually campervan living, full-time campervan living is actually quite a bit cheaper. So we really enjoyed that, especially with free camping, which helped leverage the fact that YouTube weren't paying us much money at all. So the first problem that ever happened with us, I think, in Frida, was that the Chinese diesel heater packed up on us. So we didn't use the diesel heater at all for months and months and months on end. That's probably what the problem was with it, maybe. Until we got to the winter, and then first time when we needed it in the winter, after having many months off, it decided to pack up. It was around that time when loads of dodgy Chinese diesel heaters were being sold, and many people had issues. The diesel heater we've got now at the moment is the same brand and make, I believe, but no issues whatsoever. It was just as many people were saying at the time, you get lucky or you don't. But if you were buying diesel heaters around that time, then you would probably be very unlucky. And diesel heaters are the thing that keeps you warm in the winter in camper vans. They're very important. They're integral to van life for us because Janine hates the cold. So yeah, the diesel heater packed up in Frida. It was in winter time, and we were doing at the time quite a lot of travel around the north of England. The north of England you might as well travel to in the winter because it's beautiful and the people are nice, and the weather down south is wet. But up north they have crispier days, frosts, bit of snow, beautiful. So that's where we decide to spend our time in the winter. We don't mind that it's colder. It's just that we rely solely on the diesel heater. We really want to spend Christmas in Frida for our first Christmas doing winter van life in the van, and have Christmas dinner in the van. And it was a very memorable time because literally we were spending all of our time trying to get this diesel heater fixed, and we managed finally to get it fixed by a mechanic that my dad knows. And then we had just enough time to travel to the spot where we wanted to spend Christmas Day, which is in Castleton, and we'd focused so much on the flipping diesel heater that we completely ignored the fact that our gas was running down. So as we were cooking Christmas dinner, it was dark outside, it was actually snowing I think as well, the Calor gas bottle ran out, and all we'd managed to cook were the Brussels sprouts. So all we ended up eating that year was cold Brussels sprout sandwiches in the end. It was an absolute disaster. However, that's van life for you. We were warm, so we were actually, in the end, we were happy. That was quite a comical disaster that happened. The thing is, with Frida, we bought her and got her converted to be a weekend holiday whatever van. We had no idea that we'd end up actually living full time in her. So the bed was actually widthways, which meant that the bed was only 6 foot long. I'm 6'2", which meant that I was having to curl up all the time and never could stretch out. I actually thought that this wouldn't be too much of a problem in the short term or even the long term, because I thought I'd probably curl up every night anyway, but it ended up being a nightmare. And slowly, it was getting worse and worse and worse as winter was going on, and we had the diesel heater issues and what have you. And I realised I was lacking sleep, and my mood started to change during the daytime, and I didn't know why, and it all came to a head, and realised it's because the bed was too small. So one day, I think it was in Whitby, we decided that enough was enough and that we're actually going to have to change the vans. We couldn't carry on doing what we were doing, the way we were doing it. I just couldn't live like that because it was affecting my mental health, not getting sleep. I was searching on eBay and saw a dark green, beautiful looking removals van on for sale down in Devon, and I've just fell in love with it instantly, and Janine fell in love with it instantly, and I just thought I could just picture converting it into a camper van and living in it. I could just picture it. So I think it was the next day we went down to go and look at it, and we bought it straight away. Just fell in love with it straight away, and that was it. The rest was history. So what happened next was really the big learning around van life and when the crazy times really started. We're just about to have some lunch and I'll fill you in after.
From 7 to 3, overindulging the flesh like it's free. We're on a fast ride where monkeys killing time with machines. Making love that we don't even feel.
One real big bonus when you move from one van to the next is you know more about what you want in a van and what you don't want in a van. So definitely one of the major ones, and the reason why we were changing vans, was to have a king size bed in there. Fixed king size bed was number one. We also wanted a fixed shower. There's something about having a shower that makes you feel a little bit more normal and a bit more sort of with it. And so we thought we'd prefer to have a fixed shower rather than a fixed toilet. It's not everybody's preference, but it was ours. Also an oven. We missed baking and doing things, roasting and all that sort of stuff in the oven. A log burner, because we'd had so much trouble with the diesel heater, we thought that an alternative heat source would be a really good idea. Definitely wanted a larger fridge for sure. We'd also liked access to hot water without boiling the kettle, so a boiler, for instance. I guess one of the biggest upgrades you need to make when you move from one van to the next is most people always up their power. So we went from lead batteries to lithium batteries. We wanted a roof full of solar, and we wanted to be the ultimate sort of off-grid machine, so we wouldn't have to worry about it during winter or summer. One of the main worries we had at this point was the writing on the side of the van. Should we keep it? Should we get rid of it? It just, when we took all of the decals off and the lettering off, it just didn't look the same. So we put all the lettering back on, but changed the words round. And when it came to naming the van as well, it was a real obvious choice. It went from A. Morgan's or P. Morgan's Removal Company to just Morgan. And then it was just a case of moving in and decorating. As we love being by the beach so much, we wanted to go for the beach shack sort of minimalistic look, and we were really, really pleased with how it turned out. To test Morgan out, we decided to go on a huge 5 to 6 month tour of the mainland British coastline, literally covering from Kent all the way around back down to Sussex, doing an almost complete circular route. And in all honesty, during this time we did come across a lot of hurdles, but they were hurdles that made us understand the van a lot better, and we just overcame them and overcame them and overcame them. The whole plan was to do the circular route of mainland Britain, and by the time we finished that at the end of summer was to head into Europe. A problem was, around this time, intuitively or a gut instinct or something just felt like something wasn't right. So although we stuck to the plan and headed into Europe anyway, something really, really didn't feel right, and we went through Luxembourg and Germany and all the way to Munich to Oktoberfest. Had a cracking time at Oktoberfest, a very bizarre, strange experience. But when we sprang a leak in the ceiling, we saw it as a sign. With it all feeling a bit odd anyway, we decided to go with our guts and head back to the UK. This was one of the best decisions that we have ever made, it turns out. So we headed to our friends Neil and Emma at Urban Van Life, who helped us sort the overhead hatch out and get rid of the leak so that it's completely sealed and everything's good. And all of a sudden we're heading into the British winter. With us feeling so good about the back of the van being so warm and cozy with the diesel heater and the log burner and all the rest of it for winter, we decided to celebrate the fact and go visit some of the Christmas markets around the UK. We made it as far as the first Christmas market, which was Bath Christmas Market, or Bath Christmas Market is what Janine calls it. And we had a really, really good time there. And it was only leaving the Bath Christmas Market, I think we were on our way to Wales, I can't remember. On that journey, it was like a thick ice fog. The conditions were dark and dangerous, really bad. That an oil warning light came up on the dash, and we quickly pulled onto the side of the road, and that was it. Too late, oil had gone everywhere, and the engine was completely fried. We were on a really dangerous road. The police came, cornered us off. We waited for ages in the freezing cold, and then we got towed in winter time to a local garage that could take us. And it turned out that indeed the head gasket had blown and caused significant damage to the engine, or so we were told. We were without a home at this point during winter, and it was quite distressing. Thankfully, there was family who were living nearby who allowed us to stay for a few days whilst we got communication from the garage, who told us that the price was going up and up and up. Not only did we need to get a new reconditioned engine, which costs £7,000 or £8,000, but we also needed whole new ancillary parts. Whilst you're there, you might as well get a clutch, injectors, that sort of thing. The list is huge. The end cost of replacing the engine and getting all new ancillary parts was close to £11,000. It was the biggest financial shock of our lives. At the time, however, I got news of my granddad, who recently and sadly passed, had passed on a small amount of money to me, £1,000, small, large money, a nice amount of money to me. And with that, I thought there's no way that I want one penny of this to go on engines, ancillary parts, or anything like that. My granddad wouldn't have wanted that. I didn't want that. So I thought we'd do something completely different, a whole new adventure. It was freezing cold winter in England, so where could we go that this would make a big difference to our lives? So it needed to be cheap, it needed to be hot, and it needed to be fun, and ultimately rewarding. That was when we decided to buy a 20-year-old rickshaw in India and travel across India from the very southern tip to very, very north in Amritsar, on a 9,000 kilometre, 9-month journey. So reluctantly paying over the money to the garage and parking Morgan somewhere safe, that's exactly what we did. And we had the greatest adventure potentially of our lives in India. After experiencing so much adversity, going to a country that is just full of such warm and kind-hearted people was exactly what we needed at that point. Our 9-month India trip was split into 2 parts. After 6 months, we returned to the UK because our visa had run out. So we parked up the rickshaw in Goa, not knowing when we would return, and we headed back to the UK. We went and collected Morgan, who with his new engine, and absolutely everything was fine and dandy in Morgan, or so we felt. And so we decided to take it really steady with him, trying out the new engine. But ultimately it's a good thing, because it's like starting afresh with a brand new camper van, and we'd just got the back completely sorted, and now the engine was sorted with all new ancillary parts. It's like a whole new fresh sheet. We thought, this is it, we're going to be driving around for the next 100,000 miles and having the best time ever. That summer, last summer, we did some amazing things, but not all in Morgan actually. We got lent a electric VW classic camper van that we travelled around North Scotland in. That was crazy and fun. The second major trip that we went on when we came back from India was Ireland. We did the Wild Atlantic Way, and we actually rented a brand new VW T6 for that, that was small and light and great for doing such a long road trip. It's the longest coastal road in the world, something like 1,200 miles or something like that. It was definitely one of the best road trips we've ever done, and I can't recommend it enough. But the main purpose of us going there wasn't the Wild Atlantic Way. It was actually to retrace some of Janine's family roots. Janine's mum is from Ireland, and Janine hadn't been there since she was a little girl, baby almost. So it was a very, very special, emotional trip. We went on a treasure hunt trying to find Janine's family home, which ended up being a proper treasure hunt. And then we found it, a derelict cottage. It was very emotional, so much so that the local papers even picked up on it. It was something that we'll never forget, and definitely another one of the greatest adventures we've been on. And actually, we can't wait to return to Ireland. We went back to England and did some of the summer festivals and had a really, really good time in Morgan. But at the end of the summer season, we drove from the south coast heading towards Birmingham when disaster struck in a major way for the second time in our van life career. As we were driving along, all of a sudden, the thermostat went from safe to red light in a split second. Thankfully, we were right next to a lay-by. I pulled right over just immediately, and the damage was already done. There was obviously some fault in there or something, because we couldn't have done anything safer, better, or more for that engine. When lifting up the bonnet and calling the RAC out, they said that definitely the head gasket has gone, has fried. It was the most distressing news, again, that we could have, because obviously it either means new head gasket skimmed, or another new reconditioned engine. And the RAC guy said, actual fact is, guys, it's not your fault that the top radiator hose has been installed incorrectly, and it was rubbing on the airbox filter and caused it to split, and that's what caused it to overheat and the head gasket to go. So it's a knock-on effect from that. We managed to get it towed to a garage, and the mechanics at that garage backed up what the RAC person had said. And so we knew that as it wasn't our fault, that someone else was liable for this. The people installed the engine, which is what the mechanic said. So we knew that we had to leave Morgan at the garage where it had been towed to, because we couldn't live in him anymore because there was no engine. We couldn't travel anywhere, and the compound that it was kept in wasn't insured for us to live there. Not wanting to stay in travel lodges and Premier Inns and all the rest of it, and knowing that it'll take at least a few weeks, we decided to go and embark on another big adventure, something that I've wanted to do for the last 20 years. It was the Camino de Santiago trek. This was just the end of last year. It's an 800-kilometer trek across France and northern Spain that's ancient, that pilgrims have been doing for a very long time, and it was definitely one of the best things we've ever done, and it helped us gain perspective about van life, what was happening, and gave us a fresh head for coming back to the UK and facing the music, as it were. Unfortunately, Morgan, after 6 weeks, hadn't had one thing done to him, because the legal process in England just takes forever. Knowing now that this was not going to be a quick affair, and it was going to take, rather than weeks, but months, and the England at the moment is not a place to be with the cost of living crisis without having your own van. Van life keeps the cost down for us. It's also our chosen lifestyle, but without the van, it would be very expensive. So we decided to head back to India, which is actually very low cost living, and somewhere that we absolutely adore, to pick up the second half of our adventure, traveling from the very south of India all the way to the north. 9,000 kilometers later, we'd finished our trip, and we donated our rickshaw that we bought with my granddad's inheritance to an animal sanctuary that actually is a non-governmental organisation that rescue dogs, that relies solely on donations. And we donated Pete Pete's named after my granddad, which is the name of the rickshaw, to the animal sanctuary, and they have been since using it as an ambulance to go and rescue dogs. It's worked out really, really well for them. We're so pleased. We couldn't think of a better home, and we regularly get updates from the founder of that sanctuary letting us know the different jobs that Pete has been doing, dropping dogs off to go and get operated on, rescuing dogs, sometimes with happy endings, sometimes with very sad endings. Either way, we're just so pleased that our rickshaw ended up in such a good home. So once again, our time in India and our tourist visa was up, and we had to return back to the UK and face the music. This time, however, we had to give, whilst we were in the last few weeks of India, we had to give the green light for the garage to put the engine in, regardless of the third party not accepting liability. And we just sort of prayed that by the time that we returned home, that they would have accepted liability, and the money would be sat there ready to pay for the new engine to be installed, and everything would be okay. As naive and as optimistic as that might be, the legal system had other plans. The really upsetting thing about it all is that both the engines and ancillary parts were at a cost to us, and the grand total for both of those engines out of our own pocket has been almost £18,000. And it was really difficult getting the money together to pay for the second engine. But we knew that whatever happens, this is going to go on for ages, that we had to do it. Morgan cannot be sat there without an engine. We cannot leave a vehicle at our garages for such a long period of time. So we had to get moving. It was our responsibility at this point to get things moving. So last time we saw you, I said that the solicitor had sent a 7-day warning about it all. I can't get into too much specific details, saying that we're moving on to the next stage. There's so many stages in this legal process. Unfortunately, our claim seems to be being ignored. The third party have gone very, very quiet, which has left us feeling even more uneasy about returning back to van life. Because we've had to front so much money for these engines, I say the last £7,000 that went over was very, very difficult for us to sort out. And now we're in a bit of a predicament. We're still hoping that we're not going down the court route, but it's starting to look that way. And as British people, we've got to unfortunately expect the best and prepare for the worst. The worst being that we don't get the money back for the engine.
There was a lot in this town. It had a really nice sparkle. I was about to forget.
As I said at the start of this video, it's actually quite ironic, the situation that we're in. For the first time ever, it's actually like we've got ourselves a brand new camper van. New engine with a 12-month warranty, all new ancillary parts, 12 months MOT, fully serviced. The back also feels like for the first time ever it's completely done, and like a warm, cozy beach shack, especially as we're by the beach as well, that's fully off-grid in the winter and the summer. Yet we're in a bit of a predicament because of the financial strain to get him to this point. The reason why we've done this video and recapping everything that's happened is to provide some history and context as to how we got into this mess and the stages in the time before in history where Janine and I have been at these junctions, these crossroads, where we've got to make big decisions based on what's happened, and this feels like another one of those really, really serious ones, and it's left us in quite a predicament. One thing's for sure, that by the time that we come back next Sunday, we're going to have made a big decision moving forwards about what's happening with us, Morgan and VanLife. So thank you for subscribing. For those who have subscribed and following, we'll see you next Sunday, where we're going to be, well, yeah, big decisions afoot. And thanks for liking the video, and we'll see you next week.
We know what we have, let's hold on tight. Found what we're looking for in life. Call us crazy, but things are finally right. With you and I, the future is bright.